The man was full of wounds. He balanced on the edge of deadly exhaustion and the garbage container to see farther. In the twilight, his keen eyes peered the city skyline to see if the channel was narrower somewhere. They were moving downstream at the center, and he feared his strength would reduce more quickly than the distance that separated him from the shore. Even an experienced gymnast would have fallen off the narrow edge of the shipping container used to transport waste on the medium-sized barge. Yet our hero had more trouble figuring out what to do next than keeping his balance. He was fatally exhausted. The escape took such a toll on him, only the pain kept him awake. The dark benevolently hid him, so he didn't have to jump in the rubbish where his lacerations would have gotten infected. He had to quickly find a place to rest, otherwise he would soon fall into the filth. Most of his aspirations were dissipated by the torment of his escape. Only a simple desire remained: to survive the day. The system that used to hold him captive filled his head primarily with demagogic ideologies. Thus, his newfound freedom meant he had to set goals, but he was only good at following orders. He had no other duties in his entire life than practicing combat, learning survival and medical techniques, studying geography, all in all, acquiring all conceivable war-related knowledge. He was conditioned to obey without questions, doubt, or even complaint. He would rely on his own mind only in the absence of instructions. What ripped him out from between the dozed thoughts of the past was a human-shaped disturbance of the railing's shadow. He prepared for the worst. The helmsman of the ferry looked at the raider in surprise. "It's alive," he said to himself in a low voice. It occurred to him that he was dealing with an attacker. Surely just some large bird pecking in the garbage. The control panel of the watercraft held his attention for a time. He was approaching a vortex at the foot of the bridge. During the cautious maneuver, he blinked at the raider at ever shorter intervals with increasing anxiety. "It's not pecking anything, it's just sitting in one place." He maneuvered towards the dump site. "I have to assume there's a stowaway on board." He liked to call the old barge a ship, and he secretly thought of himself as a captain with qualities from the old days of sailing. In that case, I must check. He picked up a weapon, and with uneasy thoughts he was pacing towards the container when he saw the stranger. He was expecting a worn vagabond lying on the trash, but he saw a man of robust physique, every cartilage trembling with exhaustion, covered with wounds, yet balancing on the edge of the container, seemingly defying physics while blinking sleepily. A series of thoughts set in his mind in the state of dim consciousness, similar to when he questioned his perception of life. At one point, he had to realize he had a very distorted picture of the world. He loved all his companions in the squad as his brother. He would have sacrificed his life for any of them if they had come closer to the goal by it. This love planted in him made him rebel. He opened his eyes and saw sparks of an electric discharge. The owner poked at the trespasser with the taser in his hand, but he caught the weapon and spun a somersault to the deck, taking the gun from his hand. Inhuman, he thought. He was just about to put his hands up in submission when the acrobat hit the ground. His legs could no longer hold his weight. He collapsed like a puppet stripped of its ropes. Darth was furious with how the date went. He wasn't used to this. He paced on the riverbank, the venue for the romantic walk after dinner, to find out what to do next. He wanted to put on his armor and destroy something. At first, they had a cheerful conversation with the lady, but Darth invited her home in vain. She said she had to go and did not want a ride. Annoyed by his failure, he was determined not to leave it at that. He set his mind to find out what she wanted to hear and seduce her. Darth noticed a rapidly advancing figure. One who lives as a bounty hunter learns to notice such things. The fleeing man shook off his pursuers. Even Darth lost sight of him for a while. When he saw him again on the ferry, motionless, the helmsman set off to check him just in time before Darth lost interest in watching the scene. The sparks made him move closer. He saw the unmistakable figure of the fugitive he had observed previously. Then, in addition to the cautious inquiry, a different idea was born in his mind. From the next bridge, he descended to the barge. As he peered through the cabin door, he saw two men. One was lying on the table, the other leaning over him trying to treat his wounds. Hopeless. His skin hangs like rags, as if torn by a beast. Darth didn't know how well he guessed. It could be seen that the wounded haven't had much time left in him. He lay too still. His breathing was intermittent. His spilled blood dripped on the floor. For a long time he secretly planned to escape. He did what he was trained to do. The system that bound him, at the same time enabled him to break free. He deemed the loss of his life more acceptable than slavery. He made his first independent choice when he decided he would not be controlled, even if he had to die for it. That goal was very close to him by then. Suddenly he opened his eyes wide, gathering all his remaining strength, pulling his caretaker close to him. Then he spoke clearly and well articulated. "My brothers need to know they're being misled." His eyes rolled up, the back of his head tapping on the table. Darth shot the ferryman through the glass. "I don't know what's going on, but the information hunter will be interested. This way he can only find out from me." He had to disappear as soon as possible, but his curiosity made him look at the stranger one last time. He walked to the table. A giant. 2 meters tall at least. He must have been a great warrior, he thought. The giant's arm twitched. Darth's first thought was to curse the date, because of which he only had his sidearm with him. He reached towards his waist, but by the time he turned off the safety, the one on the table grabbed his hand, took the gun, kicked its owner, pulled the trigger twice as he rolled off the table, then jumped out the door. Darth's attire was bullet-resistant. Without sparing his cracked ribs, he jumped up from the ground, pulled out a knife, but by the time he could use it, the stranger leaped into the water through the railing of the ship. Actually, it wasn't so much of a leap, more like a fall or a plummet. He used his last strength with this. He had no energy left to swim. He just let the water carry him. Darth didn't find a flashlight in time. After a short while, he gave up the search. He tended to his wounds using the captain's first aid kit, and finally, to fulfill his malicious intent, set fire to the ship. Power is a force inherent in social relations that allows one to carry out his will on others, even in the face of resistance. Power can be obtained by conferral of authority, expertise, armed or possibly physical force, or even through money. Urban, also known as the information hunter, abused his power of persuasion and the control of information. He wasn't a good warrior. He rarely carried a gun with him. Yet, he had authority because everyone needed and relied on him. The ones who had something to hide were terrified of him, and most of us have something to hide. "I don't suppose you want family." The information hunter looked at him pensively. "If you need a trophy, you can get her." He finally offered the opportunity. "Maybe she'll have a child. I think there's a chance." Darth thought longingly of Raven. The girl appeared before his eyes along with her brother, Gorofor, who often accompanied her. Darth quickly let go of the man's portrait, thinking of only the young and very beautiful girl. The reason for the name was the girl's ebony hair and eyes, her slender, fragile stature and intelligence. Ravens choose a single partner for life, just like Raven intended to do. Sometimes she goes home alone. You can wait for her somewhere. When will she be alone? Where? Darth tried in vain to hide his greed. Along with the erotic impulse arose a slight doubt in his mind, as if something important had escaped his attention. This feeling was suppressed. Tell me what you know first. Urban has conveyed just enough information to make curiosity and desire burn as much as possible. I don't know how to say that. I saw a man who fought like no other, Darth muttered. He found no words that could describe his impressions. I've seen many warriors in my life, but it's unknown, sir. There are trained people, but this was beyond anything. Was? He's dead. He was fatally wounded when he fell into the river. Seeing the information hunter's interest, Darth wondered if it would be beneficial to reveal he had tried to kill the man. Is that it? His influential interlocutor pretended that all this was no news to him. He spoke with his last words about his brothers who had been deceived. I didn't understand what he was talking about. Darth felt he couldn't tell much. Everyone felt that way when they talked to the man who knew everything. Interesting. What exactly did he say? I do not remember. Something like his brothers were deceived? I don't want to lie, I don't remember anymore. Darth apologized. Thank you. In 2 days, for example, she will be alone. The dim light from the night lamp was barely brighter than the moonlight filtered through the window of the second-floor apartment. I shouldn't have let him in. Raven was breathing fast. Her long, lush hair was a more beautiful ornament than any jewelry. She was scared. Darth was enormously excited by her innocence, and she knew that. Don't do it, she asked. Be sensible. She didn't want it to happen like this. But Darth was not being sensible. It was as if a veil had been thrown over his eyes. He was blinded in the heat of the moment. He knew he shouldn't do it, but he couldn't restrain himself. Neither could her. Raven struggled in vain. He pressed her beneath him, carrying not with his aching chest. There was no stopping. Raven shouted, but there was no one to hear it. Darth closed her mouth tightly. He was accustomed to abusing the opposite sex. His reputation and influence made this possible. Most women voluntarily played along, thus further enhancing the feeling in Darth that he could get away with such a thing. This is what the immoral world has taught him. The magic was over, at which point Darth recognized his deed and began to be horrified by the humiliated creature next to him. He prepared to leave. Please don't do this to me, Raven said. She didn't know what to do in her hopeless despair. If you leave me after this, my brother will kill you. Darth just wanted to get out of there, not paying attention to the girl who still had a faint remnant of hope in her. Gorofor jumped at Darth's throat without hesitation. While still on the street, the raider told him there were 2 people in the apartment, so he began to listen. The voices could be heard in front of the door. He heard it as fast as he could. Entering the room, he saw his trembling sister. All his doubts about the unfolding events faded away. As a first step, he threw Darth out to the hall so that his sister would not see the murder. Raven yelled at him too not to do it, but this man also ignored her words. Darth was not wearing his protective suit. He had no chance against the enraged bounty hunter. Gorofor kicked him so hard he flew through the door that was left open. He landed on all fours, didn't get up from there, just turned around. Please no, don't kill me. He raised his hands. He barely had enough air for that one sentence, from which he realized that the kick had broken his previously cracked ribs. Mercy! I have no chance without armor. Did you give her a chance? She's my sister. He broke Darf's ankle with an ugly stomp, then lifted the man by the arm, threw him on the street through the stairwell window with one hand. Darf landed on his feet, but his tibia shaft was completely fractured by landing on concrete after a 2-story fall. Instinctively, he tried to secure the flopping limb in the right position. Meanwhile, he realized it was all over. As he looked up and saw his opponent blocking the rising sun, he recognized his fatal mistake. I was misled. He betrayed me. Raven wasn't alone. Gar noticed that his victim's arm was reaching over the edge of the sidewalk. He stepped on it quickly. The upper arm gave in to the forces acting on it with an audible crack. Darf became incapable of defending himself. A knee weighing on his intact arm nailed him to the pavement. He awaited death engulfed by terror. He did not pay with his life for a single mistake. This fate befell on him as a result of all his previous behavior. But, unfortunately, not even in the end did he realize that his own path and deeds led him to this moment. He never exercised self-control. You broke her heart, I'll break yours, Garafol said, striking with relentless repetition until he saw a dent in Darf's chest. With his fist wrapped in metal, he broke bones, pushing in the sternum. You'll die, he said. Darf didn't react, didn't move. Filled with dread, all the way to the depths of his soul, he crossed the gateway of death. He himself never killed with such ruthless cruelty. His murderer cut his throat just to be sure. He waited for a while, then he fell down beside the dead. Revenge did not bring relief. I didn't take care of her. How scared she must be. He felt tremendous guilt. His failure made him want to give up. I'm gonna run away. I'm sure she hates the sight of me. He had deep contempt for himself, from which he thought the girl would feel the same. Gorafor rushed into the room, threw aside his helmet, and fell to the feet of the bed. I'm sorry. His sister was sobbing, wrapping the blanket around her. She felt empty. Did you kill him? She asked, but she didn't want to hear the answer. Gorafor nodded. He wondered what would be the best thing to do. He wanted to hide his face beneath the helmet. They exchanged a few words quietly. The heat quickly escaped through the open window. Gorafor closed it. He was almost driven insane by helplessness. He stood there like a sentinel, but it was already too late. Raven was cold and scared. She looked up, waiting for their eyes to meet. Not your fault. Gorafor didn't respond. Instead, he asked if he could do anything for her. She couldn't think of anything, so he left her alone. It wasn't cold anymore, yet Raven was shivering for a long time, trembling on a corner of the bed by the wall, before she finally calmed down for a while. From that day, she asked to be named Hollow, which sounds very similar to the word raven in a different tongue. Something that is hollow has a space inside it as opposed to being solid all the way through. If a person is described as hollow, it means they have no real value or worth. The information hunter was pleased. Things happened exactly the way he wanted them to. Darf had to die. He killed the ferryman. The man had good eyes and good ears. How could Darf imagine I wouldn't come to know? He must have suspected something, but the stimulus was strong, so he tried. This is what they call a high-risk, low-reward situation. Urban liked to arrange things. He did not execute people with his own hands. He got someone else to have a reason to kill his enemies. He told Gorafor that his sister was in danger. He later felt sorry for both of them and felt perhaps a little guilty. This feeling remained in him It turned into some kind of sympathy. Therefore, he told Garafor a few weeks later that he would do well to go to a certain place if he wanted to keep his crush alive. And also because the person tasked with killing Garafor's love was Mutram, towards whom the information hunter felt disdain. Urban had previously suggested to Mutram that he should kill a person, but he did not listen. So, to cause trouble for Mutram, Urban let Garafor know a certain time and place, thinking he might sabotage the action. The information hunter felt that he would have to pull himself together and be very cautious if he wanted the increasingly intertwined fibers to become a useful fabric instead of a Gordian knot.